That is the way it goes, man.
Yeah.
That's just the
What do
way
you
it
got?
goes.
I saw you had a GTR article that was coming up.
Yes, this was actually pretty cool, man. I let me share my screen on this. And the cool part about this is that th- it's Nissan related because of the designer of this car that we want to talk about here. The car itself is not a Nissan, but I'll get onto that in a minute here. But it's the designer of this car. He was let me just get to the title of here. The Nissan GTR designer pins a lightweight carbon EV driver's car. This comes from a website called newatlas.com, in which they say here that the former and retired chief creative officer at Nissan, Mr. Shiro Nakamura, uh, again, since retired, but has since been very busy still. He actually has his own company called SN Platform, and this company is employed with a handful of designers with very good, you might say, elaborate experience and credibility. And SN Platform actually partnered with a company called the AIM Company, and that's out of Japan. What they did is that they actually were working to essentially create a car, and this is not a rendering. This is an actual car that was developed. This car was made to showcase the capabilities of the AIM company, of what they're able to do. Um, Before we get into it, though, dude, a little bit more about Shiro Nakamura. Again, he was at Nissan from 1999 to 2017, a very long career at Nissan as a senior vice president and again as chief creative officer. A lot of the cars that he had his hands in or his influence on, let's just call it a very very awesome list: the 350Z, 370Z, R35 GTR, the Nissan Cube, the Juke, the Leaf, and then when you get into Infinity, it was the M Series sedan and the FX. I believe that's a crossover vehicle. Arguably, Nakamura-san, essentially his influence has been on more sports cars than any other designer on the planet. When you look at the number of sports cars involved, I think that's a fair argument to make. So he's been very, very uh, influential, and specifically with Nissan. So again, this car that we're looking at here is called the AIM EV Sport '01, and again, it debuted actually at the Japanese Auto Council in April of this month. I'm going to scroll down on these pictures. What I want to do, Miles, is that let's talk about the styling first, and then I've got some technical points about this car as well. So,
Man,
um,
I'm gonna say right now, I was like, he's rolling on some fatties. I don't know what those wheels are, but
yeah,
man, they got to be 20s.
they're 20s. They are
Okay.
20s.
Man,
Big, big
I usually got a
wheels.
pretty good eye. It's not always depends on the car. Sometimes it can be a little deceptive, but man, I mean those are 20s. And look at that brake package that's back there. It's got to be a 6 pot, caliber
Huge.
sitting way. I mean, it's ginormous. It's
And what I think about that too is that looking at this car, yeah, these wheels look so huge is because
massive.
also the wheelbase is so short. This wheelbase
What are we talking?
is
Miatas?
15. What's that?
Go ahead.
2400 millimeters. I didn't get the actual length. I think that's like 19. You're in Miata range. How about
Yeah,
that? When
I
I
was gonna say
when
you're in Miata country.
So
So
imagine a Miata with 20s on it. This is kind of what this car looks like in terms of proportion and scale.
damn
Um,
son. All right, all
let's
right.
scroll down. I personally like
I
this styling. The front end kind of reminds me of a modern day Figaro. Remember the Nissan
Yeah,
Figaro of the
that's kind of
90s?
where I was going for. Remember that crazy Russian designed? Oh my God, I'm losing track of it. But it's a Russian designed car, really big seller in the UK.
Put it in H. You're just like, what gear is H?
Yeah, standard H pattern. It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think we're getting enough from this. There's a CD 009 somewhere or buried in this thing if I had to guess, but I could be wrong. But I don't
Um,
know.
so, again, small proportions, these huge wheels. It's obviously a two-seater, a hard top at this.
Okay.
I it's
I
again
mean,
from a
that's everything you
scale.
want. It's everything you want.
It's
Lightweight, power. I mean, have we talked about power yet? But you've got the
not yet.
wheel. You got
Yeah,
the big meats. I mean, it's there. All
yeah.
right. So give me some more
That's
deets.
that's Nakamura-san there, right? So, oh, before we do, these gull wing doors, man. You see how the
Oh
T
damn! I didn't even see the
tops?
gold wing doors.
Yeah, dude.
Oh,
It's not very often you see them. I mean, when I think of this, I typically think of like the what would you say, like a Mercedes or some sort of hypercar would have this style.
I was gonna say this screams hypercar definitely to me. Not even hybrid. This I mean, you start seeing the blue emblems and the way that some of the vents are in the front. That's
Mhm.
got to be all for like brake cooling and maybe really simplistic cooling because it's not really highly needed for these. But this has
Yeah.
got to be. Is this all EV?
This is all EV. Yes,
Okay.
complete EV car. So you're cooling. You can tell by the front end there, right?
Nissan's got the
The mouth
technology
is
coming out of Formula E. They've got the initiatives and the technology now to do that at that level. It's about time they compete with something. This may be it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And what I like about it too is this hatch line in the back is that it in a really small ducktail type of spoiler in the
Yeah,
body. Again, this is just
that
me being
seems
a
reminiscent
Nissan.
of like the new Z. It
That's
almost
exactly
it,
what I was
it
gonna
kind of
say.
feels like
Yes.
the tail section right there. It feels a little like the sizing of a Miata. The front nose of it feels. I hate to say it feels a little Tesla-ish. I mean, but everything feels Tesla once you take out all the
When you
grills and
talk EV, everything's
well,
Tesla-ish, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, you start taking out the fronts and looking at it, but not all that much. Like to me, it's like it almost feels Jaguar-ish in the front, like a fat nosed Jaguar.
Well, even these
What are
tail
they,
lights, I was
Panos?
thinking, yeah,
I don't know.
it seems kind of European. I was almost gonna say Porsche style type of headlight, just the curvature of it. But
Mm,
yeah,
yeah,
again, this was a working model. At least the powertrain was. I don't know whether these displays or controls in the interior were, but this is a working model that went on showcase. I personally like it so much. I think that again, Nakamura-san, especially with his relationship with the Nissan, this could be somewhat of a vision for us. Um, his influence maybe what could have been, or maybe he's got some connections at Nissan still. This could be something that we see similar to in the future at Nissan. My fingers are crossed on that one, but wishful thinking, you might say. Um, let's get into the tech though. You asked me that just earlier. Before we get into the numbers, there was a really good quote in this article that kind of lets you understand what the reasoning and the theme of this car is. Uh, Nakamura-san said that it seems that most car builders think that everybody wants 1,000 horsepower under their right foot, when in actual fact, having all that horsepower makes a heavier car with a lot more batteries, which means robustness that may be added at every single component in the car. So with more power, all these weight gets added with supporting um, brake suspension that has to handle that power, much less the weight of itself. He says the brakes, for example, the brakes need to be bigger and more powerful to stop more weight and the faster speeds. And then also the suspension must work harder, the tires as well, and handling gets worse with every pound of weight you add. So obviously the theme of this car was lightweight EV sports car. Not 1,000 horsepower. It's not this hypercar range, but when you start looking at the savings in weight that you will see in this car. Again, it's still a concept, but it definitely is something to really consider. Um, Hopefully, somebody will make it into a somewhat of a production car. This car is actually rear-wheel drive.
mm,
Another quote was saying that with most EVs, a lot of manufacturers are going the all-wheel drive route.
yep.
Which is a motor in the front, a motor in the rear. This car is still a rear-wheel drive configuration, dual motor still. So you have two motors in the rear, and there is a very cool feature for handling's sake, where what do they call it? Advanced torque vectoring. So you still get rear wheel drive. You get the fun of the rear wheel drive. However, um, it kind of has that stability still to where when the car can monitor some sort of slip between the left and right rear wheels, it's able to correct. This reminds me of what the 370 does. It has an advanced stability control where I called it. It would gecko. The car would kind of do this little shake.
Yeah.
It's because
It reminds me of
it
the Hikest days
was
back in the day when we would have it for the rear, but I guess this is for the front, right? So, or
no,
is it
no.
an alternating for all wheels?
It's no, just rear wheel drive. The front wheels have no power whatsoever. It's purely rear wheel
Oh,
drive,
okay.
and I like that. I mean, I think that's. It- I think
Yeah.
it keeps the cost down as well.
Give me a shot of that
And
nose again. Let me see
sure,
here.
sure,
Like
sure,
the
sure.
straight shot. I don't know why I'm getting a vibe, and I could be wrong. Like, so there was a car that came out years ago called the TVR Chimera. It's you'd see it a lot in Britain, but
Hmm,
the Chimera, if you want the, but it was a it's an older TVR, but it reminds me just so much of the front. But there's a lot of styling aspects here that that look so much
yeah.
different. I don't know why. It's taking a lot from that. But again, this is full on prototype country, so you never know what's going to come out of the box as a final product if it's going to actually be anything that does make it into production. But
True.
damn, I mean, I love some of this. Oh, let's talk
Yeah.
curb weight. What do we got going on?
Oh, check this out. So the
Comparisons?
guys at New Atlas developed a comparison of this car, of this EV concept car, with another car, probably one of the last cars that Mr. Nakamura was influential on, which was the R35 GTR. So you see a side-by-side comparison of both of his sports cars, and you see the differences. Most notable differences are of course, being EV. When you get into power, you've got GTR has more power. You're looking at 557 horses versus this EV has 480. But you start getting into torque, and the EV
Yeah,
sports car has the
I'm gonna
546
win all day long.
foot-pounds
Let's see.
more than the GTR. Yeah, the weight, man, the weight is the big one. Curb weight. This GTR, the numbers that were in this come from the 2023 year model GTR. GTR is about 3,900 pounds right now, according to this site. Meanwhile, this EV sports car is much lighter, about 800 pounds lighter, 3,100 pounds, 3,141 to be exact,
Hmm.
is what this car weighs. So, overall, I put here it's shorter. The car is shorter. It's lower. It's lighter. It has more torque. It's obviously advanced, very advanced, being EV. It has the same 20-inch wheels, similar, same size as GTR, and then you've got a double wishbone front end and rear suspension on this car as well. The other notable difference between the GTR and what makes this EV so light is that it is a carbon fiber or laminate body. Essentially, the entire thing. It's an aluminum tube frame, and then you have carbon fiber wrapped on it. So many differences, but again, I would like to see if this car ever makes it to some sort of production. Which, by the way, this company, the AIM company, has been encouraged. The feedback that this company received during its debut, uh, essentially, they were encouraged to develop a feasibility study about a possible limited series production run, which could be very exciting. I'm sure, obviously, very expensive too. But I think that I don't know. My wishful thinking says that if Nakamura-san, considering his relations with Nissan, how cool would it be if Nissan were able to sort of license some of this technology and make some improvements? We've talked about Nissan and EV for so long. We know that Nissan has a solid state uh, lightweight battery coming out very, very soon,
Yep.
and which could even make this car more.
More attractive, probably more cost effective. I know Nissan was putting in for a lot of financial backing into a battery production. Remember that? We saw that as a
Yes.
viable option. I think they were going to plant that in UK, if I remember correctly. So we'll see if that's anything that comes to fruition. I mean, this is probably one of those highly anticipated project that could hopefully make its way into fruition. So we'll see.